What's up? We're back in the Tesla, and our good friend Thomas Frank is going to be joining us today. I don't know where he is, and usually we have a call and I pick him up, but I can't even get him on the phone. If only I could just snap my fingers and he would be here. Whoa,
Heck?
dude, welcome.
Warn me before you're going to do that.
Yeah, my bad. The magic's kind of off right now, but good to see you.
Some practice.
Thanks for
Good
being
to see
here.
you as well, man.
Let's go on a drive.
All right, let's do it.
Thomas Frank
Safety first.
in the house. Yes, safety first. I learned that from Dora the Explorer.
I did, yeah. I also learned no swiping.
Swipe or no
Very
swiping.
important lesson.
Yeah, but man, I'm glad you're here because we have a lot to talk about. Actually, we talked last week on the podcast, so make sure you check out the podcast if you haven't seen it yet, where Thomas comes on. We talk about his story, about how he started with a website called College Info Geek, which is crushing it right now. He helps a lot of students in college do better in college, but now you've grown to so much more than that. You still have that, obviously, but the YouTube channel, how many YouTube subscribers do you have now?
Somewhere over 1 million.
It's insane,
1,080,000, something like that.
Did you ever think you'd get there?
No, not at all. When I started YouTube, I thought 10,000 would be a really great pie-in-the-sky goal.
Now you have 1 million.
Yeah, now I have 1 million. It's kind of crazy how when you hit a certain milestone, the next one is the one that seems crazy and impossible.
So what's the
It
next
just
one
keeps
for you?
going up. I guess because 10 million seems ridiculous, especially for a self-improvement channel. None have done it. And also because subscribers are so much less important. I think less about subscribers these days and more about other things. So I guess right now, the milestone in terms of business growth that I'm thinking about is more in terms of website traffic and also Instagram presence.
Interesting.
Hitting 100K on Instagram is kind of the next social media goal.
So what are you at now?
24,000, I think.
Okay.
Or right around there.
Sweet. So follow Thomas on Instagram. Also follow his channel too. You can see it right now. And what kind of videos do you have there, just so everybody knows?
So for the most part, I help students become better students, but a lot of the topics end up being applicable to other people because they are productivity and self-development topics. So things like how to learn more efficiently, how to take better notes, how to read books and actually remember what you read in those books, and health topics like how to get better sleep. Doing a lot of sleep videos, actually. Not a whole lot on food and things like that.
Yeah. Well,
And
we're going to
general
talk about
productivity.
that. We're going to talk about that right now. So
Okay.
everybody watching this likely has something that they want to work toward, and they're trying to be productive. They might be busy, just like a person in college. So
Yeah.
what's a tip that you might have for somebody who's trying to be more productive? Where do you even start with that, really?
I think the biggest thing is to start small. So one of my favorite lessons I learned early on in college came from this book called The Motivation Hacker by this guy. He's a quantified self dude out in California, and he tried to do all these crazy habits all at once and kind of documented his journey and talked about what he learned. And he had this concept in the book he talked about called success spirals, where you have to start very small when you're wanting to build a habit, and then you kind of spiral up and you add more difficulty or you add more habits over time because you're sort of leveling up. And then if you fall off, you need to start small again. You can't start immediately where you were. So what I see in most people who start following me and asking me, how do I become more productive? They want to do all these things all at once. Start getting up at 5 in the morning. They want to start journaling, want to start meditating, start reading, a book a week, all this kind of stuff. And you can't do it immediately. So the biggest thing for me is to find something that speaks to you and start with that and make sure you can get it really solid.
So start with one.
Yep.
And then start small. What do you mean by start small?
It could be, so say you want to start doing pull-ups every day. Start by doing 1 pull-up a day, or start by just making yourself go to the gym and just getting there. That's the accomplishment for you.
Yeah.
And then start moving forward, because a lot of people, they see a recommended program from a pro online and they'll say, okay, I'm going to do that every single day because that's what I need to do. And I just realized that this windshield goes all the way up and I have to comment on it. It's ridiculous. But when you haven't spiraled up, like Nick says, you can't stick with that kind of a program unless you're some sort of ridiculous discipline robot. So you want to start smaller, and then eventually you can stick to that kind of a big program.
Do you have an example of a habit that you've done that you've spiraled up on?
Yeah. So I guess my whole morning routine is a good example of being able to add things to it over time. But with pull-ups, I bought a door frame pull-up bar to, 1, reduce the friction and make sure I could do it more often. But 2, then start doing more and more every single day. I would start with 5 a day, and now I probably do 20 or 30 a day.
No
Not
way.
a one set, but
Oh, I was going to say, geez, man, that's crazy.
no, I think I'm up to 15 in one set with chins, and then 12 in one set with pull-ups.
And how long did it take you to get that?
I don't know. I didn't really track it. So for that kind of a habit, I just thought, all right, the bar is in the door, so it's kind of like an if-then statement in a program. If I go into the office, I do 5 or 6 pull-ups, or if I want to take a break from my work, I just go over and do some pull-ups.
That's cool.
I would have to go back into my Amazon history to see when I bought that thing. It was probably 4 months ago, maybe.
It kind of reminds me of Steve Cam from Nerd Fitness.
Yeah.
He wanted to learn how to play, I think it was the violin or guitar, or one of the string instruments.
Violin sounds right for Steve.
And he said it like in the hallway with that he passed every single day, so he could just always be reminded that it was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of similar with what you just said with the pull-up bar. It's just like triggering that you do it right then and there when you see it every time, then it just becomes like a natural thing you do.
Yeah. Well, there's this book called The Happiness Advantage by a guy named Sean Aker, and it contains one of my favorite principles about habit building, which is what he calls the 20-second rule. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea is if you want to build a good habit, make sure it takes less than 20 seconds to start doing it. So Steve's example is great. Have the violin right in the living room. Every time you pass it, it's just right there. You can pick it up and play it. I do the same thing with my guitar. So I went out and I bought a really nice guitar recently, but it's nice, and I live in a dry climate, so I have to keep it in the case all the time with a humidifier. And that makes it kind of a pain to take out and play. So I keep my cheap guitar so I can have it out in the living room all the time. And I end up playing that guitar probably 75% of the time, but that guitar ensures I play every single day.
Just because it's out.
Yep, and that's why I've gotten as good as I have.
Yeah, and you are good. We were just jamming earlier.
Thank you.
He's
and
really
you're
good.
getting pretty good too.
Thanks.
I mean, how long have you been playing? Like a few weeks?
Just a few weeks, but I've been practicing like every other day, or a couple hours a day.
I think if you're playing a couple hours a day, you're actually practicing more than I do.
And the one thing that I learned about guitar specifically was, you just, well, for me, I wanted to be encouraged to play all the time. And my instructor from from guitarlessonspodcast.com, he said, just get a really good guitar that you will always want to play and pick up.
Yeah.
And I got the one from Back to the Future. And so I'm really excited to play it all the time.
Nice. So you actually have a teacher?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, his name's Lee Anderson. He's really cool.
That's cool. I've been thinking about getting a teacher at some point.
So yeah, so you're just self-taught, which is crazy. Now, you read a lot of books.
Yes.
And you reference them all the time in your videos, which is great. And I think a habit that a lot of us want to create is the reading books habit. Mm-hmm. What are the best strategies for selecting? We'll start with that, selecting the right books to read, because I think book reading is great, but you can waste a lot of time reading books that don't actually matter.
Yeah. Well, I think this video is going out. What did you say? This video is going out after our podcast episode?
So okay. I think July.
So by this time, I'll have a video on my channel called something along the lines of how to choose the books you read or how to avoid reading mediocre books. So that's like a whole answer on this question. But a couple of the ways that I do it: number one, have friends who read. So people like you, and then ask them, what are the best books you've read? I like to follow authors that I like on Goodreads. A lot of authors are active on Goodreads, so they'll review books that they liked. Some people who I know have book summary or book notes pages on their sites. Derek Sivers and Nat Eliason are two people who come to mind. Mm-hmm. They have really good, not only notes, but ratings and their thoughts on the books. So that's helpful. I also think it's not healthy to be overly concerned, though, with the best books, because number one, you're basically relying on other people's opinions. But number two, a book may not be amazing for some people, but it might, because of your particular circumstances or your particular goals, it might send you along a path that ends up being very rewarding for you. And that might not have happened for somebody else. And like we were talking about earlier, don't finish bad books. If you find out that the book you chose is really not worth it, then put it down. Your time is worth more than the
It's hard to put down
$10.
a book, though, because once you start it, you kind of feel like you have to finish it.
Yeah, I think we believe that because we see all these people on the internet who say they read a book a week, or they got this Goodreads profile with 1,000 finished books, or we've been taught to finish what we start. But the end goal of a book isn't to turn the last page. I mean, that really doesn't do anything for you. The end goal of the book is to get something out of it or to enjoy the process of reading it. So if a book is doing neither of those things for you, barring the whole advice to stick things out, because they may be worth it in the long run. Mm-hmm. If something is just not worth your time, then it's not worth your time.
Why do it, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you grab a book that is useful for you, how do you make sure you apply what you actually read in that book instead of just what most people do is they close it and then they move on to the next book?
Yeah. Number one, it's good to take notes or summarize. So my favorite way of taking notes is to sort of read the chapter and then either jot down notes in a bullet list or just a summary into Evernote.
So you don't write notes as you're reading?
Nope.
How come?
Because I find that it just slows down my reading process. So with some books, I'll use like those book flags or a highlighter and maybe highlight certain sections or make a mark in the margin, but I don't like to pause and take notes. I like to kind of immerse myself.
That makes sense.
The other thing is I also listen to a lot of audiobooks. A huge commitment of mine is to have a lot of physical activity. So when some days I can't sit down to read, but I always listen to an audiobook. So I'll either summarize or with Audible you can pause and you can put a note in the app, which is kind of nice. And then I think it comes down to starting small, selecting something from the book that speaks to you more than everything else and trying to implement that. And then maybe not starting another book immediately. One thing I realized a few years ago is, I was listening to your podcast, listening to Fizzle, listening to all these business podcasts, and it was like the shiny object syndrome. You listen to Todd Tressiter talking about doing a website audit, and then you listen to Benny Lewis talking about, writing books,
right.
And then you listen to somebody talking about making a YouTube channel, and you'll find yourself pulled in all these different directions. You'll put a day's worth of work into launching a podcast because that's what you heard on the latest episode, just to listen to the next SPI and be like, oh, I have to do this now. So sometimes I think it's useful to put yourself on a low information diet just so you give yourself time to implement and practice the thing you've selected for now.
I think a lot of people fear missing out on the new piece of content that comes out. I remember with the YouTube channel, for example, I was coming out 5 days a week for a while to kind of like get it going again. And I had a couple people emailing me saying, Pat, like I can't keep up. I just feel very overwhelmed now. And I'm like, you don't have to watch all the videos.
Yeah,
but
not
I think
at all.
People feel like that with podcasts, videos, blogs. How do we break away from that fear of missing out on, the next thing that could be the big game-changing article or podcast episode that we listen to?
I guess you just have to realize that if you are always doing that, then you always miss out. Because nothing takes zero investment. Nothing is easy. You just have to commit to something. And yeah, you are going to miss out on certain things. But every single choice we make is by definition a choice to miss out on many, many other things. And I tell people, like, I'm running a business here, so I don't think you need to use every single thing I put out there, but a publication schedule is very useful for me, and we're putting out ideas into the world.
Yeah.
Only 1% of your audience is probably going to actually go and use the thing that a given video gives them. So you can't just put one video out there and call it a day.
I heard about this thing recently. So there's FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. FOMO. I heard of JOMO, JOMO, the joy of missing out.
Okay.
And being very happy about the fact that you are making a decision to not dive into that new thing that comes out.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of framework, being proud of the fact that you are saying no to things.
Yeah. It's like the essentialist mindset.
Yeah.
Yep.
JOMO.
I like the Essentialism book as well. I'm guessing you've read that one, or maybe you've read The One Thing, which is a pretty similar book.
They both kind of go together.
One of the insights I like most from that book is when he talks about the fact that the essentialist actually explores more than the average person because they want to take time to try lots of things, sample lots of things, so they can figure out what actually does resonate with them.
Right.
But once they do, then they go hard on that one thing. So maybe, that's useful for some people. There's kind of like an exploration phase. And then once you've selected something that seems to resonate with you, then it's the focus phase.
In that book also, they have you rank the things you do in your life you have from 1 to 10, 1 being like, why am I even doing this? It's easy to get rid of. 10 being, I have to do this. This is something that's essential in my life. But it's the 7s, 8s, and 9s in your life or the 6, 7s, and 8s really, that are the ones that you should be saying no to or putting aside. But it's the ones we hang on to. Is it kind of the same advice related to books, related to, how to say no to the 6, 7s, and 8s so you can dive into the 9s and 10s?
Yeah. Have you heard of I think this is apocryphal, but there's this story about Warren Buffett and his private pilot. So his private pilot is basically asking Warren Buffett for life advice, and he's saying, I have so many things I want to do. How do I focus on one or a few so I can be truly great at them? So in the story, Warren says, I want you to go home and write down your top 25 goals in life. So he goes home and he does that. He comes back the next day. He says, all right, got the list. And Warren says, all right, next thing I want you to do is go and circle the top 5. So he circles the top 5 and he comes back and he says, I think I'm getting it now. These top 5 are the ones I need to focus on the most, and then the 20 others are things I can, do every once in a while, but they're not as important. Mm-hmm. And Warren says, no, those 20 are the avoid at all costs goals now, because they are the ones that are going to pull your focus away from the ones that really matter the most. Anything else you don't have a whole lot of interest in, so it's not a threat. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I try to live by. I'm not very good at it, but
what are your 5 circles?
That's a very good question. Become a musician is one. Let's see here. This is a tough one for me, actually. And I think this has been my biggest area of struggle in the recent past, because there's so many things I want to do. Mm-hmm. I've been skateboarding again, getting back into figure skating, getting back into guitar.
Figure skating, for real?
Yeah.
No way.
I started that in 2016.
How tall are you?
6'2", so 6'5" on skates.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's fun, and my girlfriend's doing it with me now too.
That's awesome.
So I want to have her take lessons so we can do like ice dancing together, which would be pretty fun. Business-wise, I've got another book idea that I'm working on, and then a website redesign, and hiring an editor. So I think those are my top business goals at the moment. But then there's always the content machine that you must feed.
Right. And then maybe what are 2 examples of the other 20 that you would love to do, but just you need to say no to them right now?
So it's tough because there's a lot of other things, like improving the podcast. I would love to do that, and there are things that I'm currently doing or I'm planning to do that will improve the podcast. So I guess by this philosophy, I should probably cut those, and I'm not sure if I will. Though there are other things that I probably will end up cutting, like buying better cameras for the podcast to make it like 2% better, or buying new like set props, or wanting to build a new set entirely for my videos. Yeah. Actually, that's something I do want to do, but I'm not going to do it. Yeah, there's a lot of things like that.
I really like that advice from Warren Buffett, and you often source a lot of inspiration from a lot of other big leaders and names out there, Elon Musk, Ben Franklin. You've done some really popular videos about that. And since we're in a Tesla, I think it's right that we talk about Elon Musk a little bit. What are some Elon Musk related productivity hacks that we could learn and pick up from him?
I want to talk about the one that people were giving me crap about on Twitter.
Okay.
So there were all these articles out there a while ago that said Elon Musk schedules his day in 5-minute increments, like basically time boxes. And Bill Gates does this as well. So I made a video on it, and it was basically like I wanted to make a video on time boxing, the whole idea of pre-planning what you're going to do in time increments so you can be more efficient. And then I think a week ago, somebody tweeted out another article someone else had written about this, and Elon replied saying, I don't do the 5-minute thing. You have to have time for creative work. So, and then a bunch of people were sending that tweet to me and everything, saying you were wrong. If I had 5 minutes with Elon, I would love for him to elaborate on how he schedules his day, because I would imagine that it is scheduled out to some degree, but that he is creating long blocks of time for engineering and design work. I hope people didn't think that he actually has 5-minute tasks one after another, like 100 in a day on his schedule. I'm imagining there's just like a meeting that's scheduled now, and then there's a 4-hour block for design work scheduled. But it is scheduled, because I feel like when you schedule your time, even when it's for creative work, you tend to work better. There's that whole idea of you can't schedule creativity. You actually can, because when you schedule creativity, you get into a habit and you become disciplined, and that's when good work happens. It won't happen every single day, but it does.
Time blocking is an essential strategy for productivity.
I think it's very useful. For some people, it's not. And one thing I've learned about productivity is it's a very individual thing. So there are the universal things like get enough sleep and eat good food.
We'll talk about that while we eat, sleep and stuff.
There we go.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
But for some people, time boxing works very well. For some people, it doesn't. I think part of my channel and part of the work I do is just giving people ideas to try out and see if that resonates with them. Some people work really well with a messy area, and some people really need to have a super clean area to work. So I'm very aware that not everything I say is going to apply to every single person out there.
Yeah, I think the key is to just be open to what the options are and try things until you find something that works for you.
Yeah. My kind of motto is there's always a better way to do it. Like what is the best way to do this? And if you can just become the kind of person who is constantly asking that, constantly figuring out like what is the solution to this problem or what's a way I can improve this process,
right,
then you're going to succeed. Regardless of whether or not you work the same way that I do or that Elon Musk does or that Ben Franklin did. Doing the breakdowns of those people is just a cool way of showing off like here's how this successful person worked in their life.
Awesome. Want to grab some food?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Having some coffee.
Cheers.
Now let's talk about sleep a little bit. You mentioned it earlier and how important that is. For years I've only been getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep ever since college.
Really?
And I've been okay.
Okay.
I thought I was one of those lucky people who could survive, and I was surviving off of 5 to 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
I worked really hard to maximize my sleep, reading books like Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson, studying it, and I feel like it's been good. But now that I'm 35, I feel like it's starting to catch up to me.
Is it catching up with you?
It is a little bit, and I got to be honest. Like I enjoy my 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Okay.
Now.
It caught up with me earlier.
Yeah.
Yep. I used to be able to do 5 hours a night. I remember my internship when I was 19 years old. That was when I started to go real hard on the blog.
Yeah.
So I would work 10-hour days, come home, stay up till 1 a.m. working, and get like 4 or 5 hours.
I feel it now.
I did that
though.
for a whole summer.
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
Yeah, I can't do it.
And I used to basketball 4 a.m. in the morning. If I do that now, the rest of my day is screwed.
When you go to bed?
10 or 11.
Okay, so that'd be 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
If you went to bed at 9, do you think you could get up at 4 and
I could
do
do that, but then I feel like I would miss out on a lot of what happens at night.
So you're not a devotee of the Jocko Willink method?
No.
4:30. Well, he's always like, nothing good ever happens at night anyway, but you're hanging out with your family at night.
Yeah, that's the time for me in April, now that the kids are down, to just finally have some time to chat and we, watch a movie or something or get stuff done around the house. So, I don't know, sleep is an interesting thing to me. You've studied it a lot. You recommend a lot of things. How can we get better sleep?
Number one is prioritize it. I think everyone, especially people who think they're entrepreneurs, or I guess, are entrepreneurs, think that they're the exception. And they'll listen to Bulletproof Executive or whatever saying, oh, if you just eat butter in your coffee, you can sleep for 5 hours and be just fine. But, you feel it. And for a lot of the times, you're deluding yourself. So, number one, you just got to prioritize it. And I think the biggest pitfall for people like me and maybe people like you is being very hardcore about the wake up time, but not disciplined about the go to bed time.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wake up at 6, which means I should go to bed at 10:30, but I'm going to bed at 11:30 tonight. I'm still waking up at 6.
Yeah.
And then
it's true. It's true. You're absolutely right. I also know that you you do a lot of research with your videos, which I appreciate a lot, and you dive into a lot of the science and stuff behind that. Any science-related things that we can understand related to sleep and why it's so important, or why we should prioritize that?
Yeah. So I guess the top science-related thing that I would talk about with sleep is the sleep cycle. When you sleep, you go through several different stages of brain activity, starting with a very light sleep where you could be easily roused. Then you move into a deeper sleep where if you were to be roused, you would feel like a truck hit you, basically.
Yeah.
And then from there you move into REM sleep, which is where dreams happen, where a lot of memories are consolidated, all kinds of stuff like that. So if you're going to wake up, you want to be woken up at the end of a sleep cycle. When you go back into like stage 1, that kind of light sleep, if you were to be woken up there, you would feel light and refreshed and everything like that. The other thing is, as the night goes on, those REM stages get longer and longer and longer. So the first cycle you do, REM is very short. This is why polyphasic sleep doesn't work very well. And why all those people on the internet who say you can do the Uberman, where you take 6 20-minute naps a day, are kind of full of crap, because your REM cycle is so tiny on those.
Yeah.
So that's why there's actually a site out there called Sleepy Time. It's a .me domain, so like sleepytie.me. You can put in your bedtime or you can put in your wake up time, and it'll tell you here's when you should go to bed or when you should wake up based on the average sleep cycle that people experience.
Okay.
And then from there you might want to experiment, because I found that mine is shorter than 90 minutes by a little bit.
So what time do you go to bed normally and do you wake up?
About 10:30 to 6 is mine.
Okay, so
And I aim to be in bed a bit before, because it takes about 10 minutes to fall asleep for me. I think the average for normal human beings is 14 minutes. But again, you have to figure out what your individual deviation from that is.
So you said earlier you have a morning routine. Do you have a nighttime routine also? To help you get into sleep a little easier? Or?
I'm not as good at being super regimented with my nights.
I think that's okay.
To be honest.
I think I'm encouraged now because you're not so regimented. You're not like blocking every single minute in what you do, which is encouraging.
Yeah.
But you're still putting the practices into place to kind of maximize your day, which is good.
My night routine is usually, hey, Anna, we need to go to bed. And then one of us has to be basically peeled away from the project they're working on and forced to go to bed.
Now, I also know that, and this is something I wish I knew in college, because I would cram for exams and I would stay up till the wee hours of the next morning to get that last ounce of knowledge in before my test. But I'm hearing that sleep actually is better than cramming because you actually are learning while you're sleeping. Can you explain a little bit more about like what that is?
Yeah, so when you're sleeping, I don't know the exact science behind this exact part, but your brain flushes toxins out when you sleep. Like these gaps between brain cells sort of widen and your brain is able to get these toxins out. It also consolidates memories, so it'll help to build those myelin sheaths around neurons. So if you don't sleep, whatever you learned the previous day, you're not going to be able to remember it as well.
Yeah.
Also, if you have a lack of sleep, when you go into an exam, you're more stressed, you have more anxiety, and you can't actually recall certain things. Stress and anxiety and a lack of sleep will block the brain from making those connections. So an all-nighter often is worth less than the studying that you did.
And then getting sleep.
Yeah, it ends up hurting.
Do you have a specific regiment for if a person watching this right now, for example, has a test that they're studying for, whether they're in college or they're studying for the lead exam or something professional, what's the best study pattern to lead up to the test to get the best test results?
Get started as early as possible and study as actively as possible. So if you can get your hands on practice exams, or you can take your notes and turn them into practice exams, or you can challenge yourself to summarize or do short answer questions, basically replicate what's going to be on the test as hard as possible and do it as early as possible. So that way you can, number one, study in the manner that the test is going to be testing you on, but also take advantage of what's called the spacing effect. So when you space out learning with different intervals of time, you end up learning more efficiently than if you try to, number one, cram it all the night before. But you can also learn more efficiently if you actually increase the intervals of time between study sessions as time goes on. So a great example is if you're learning a language, you might learn a word day one, and then you may quiz yourself on it day two, and then the next time you'd quiz yourself on it is maybe day 5 or day 6. After that, maybe you'd wait a month. And this is because the more the brain has to work to recall something, the more efficient the encoding is that happens because of that recall. So basically, what you want to target is the moment right before you're about to forget that fact.
Yeah.
And you can't get perfect on it, but you can get close.
So it's actually better to put something away for a while and come back to it later than having it be something you check every day. Because that's how I started. I had flashcards, and I would start with like 50 flashcards that I have to memorize, and then it would go to 60 the next day and 70 the next day. But I would remember all
of them?
Yeah, I would do all of them.
Okay, yeah.
And so perhaps I was wasting time.
You might have been wasting time. So you probably learned those things, but you probably could have also learned just as well.
Well, I also don't remember anything that I learned.
Well, there's also an element of caring. Like you probably don't care about a lot of those things now. So
yeah.
If you all of a sudden had reason, then you went back and you start to learn them. One of the things I'm always fascinated by is, have you ever stopped doing something for 5 years and then come back and at first you suck, but in a surprisingly short period of time, you're better than you ever were? Like I started skateboarding again after probably an 8-year gap, and it was horrible for a while, and after about a week of practice, I was better than I'd ever been before.
I feel the same way with like guitar.
Yeah. Did you play guitar when you were
I dabbled in it a little bit. I read tabs, but even like in the short few weeks I've been practicing now, I've noticed that when I come back to an exercise that I did, to start on those first days, I forget them, I'm terrible, but then all of a sudden I'm like better, like you said.
Yeah, you start to get it.
Yeah, and that's motivating, and then it makes me want to kind of learn more.
It's awesome, isn't it? For guitar was interesting because I had to build up finger calluses again, but the skills started coming back surprisingly quick.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool because I think I skipped practicing guitar for like another 8 years as well.
That's awesome.
Someone stole all my guitar gear in college.
Oh, really?
Yep, and I just never bothered to replace it. It was always I got to go to the guitar store and spend
Somebody stole my
hundreds of
DJ, my
dollars.
DJ gear.
Really?
Yeah, our wedding DJ stole my DJ.
Wait, your
equipment.
wedding DJ?
Yeah. He sold it for weed.
Okay, man, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, looks like you got to buy some DJ gear.
I'll stick with guitar
Future.
for now.
Okay.
One thing at a time.
Yep.
Right?
That's the problem with music. I want to do all of it. I want to learn production and learn vocals and drums and everything.
Yeah. Well, even like with guitar itself, there's many different styles that you can choose from, right? And I'm trying really hard to just stick with one. I
Yep.
want to learn like blues and blues theory and just blues everything, right?
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, I'm like, man, I want to do like Nirvana or Green Day.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, no, I got to go back to blues because I know that's going to help me the most.
Yeah. Do I think one word of warning to anybody thinking along these lines with something like guitar, don't be so dogmatic in sticking to one style that you stop having fun.
Yeah.
You know, if you're just like, I'm really tired of playing this, I set a goal, still practice those things, but dabble a little bit, you know?
I like that.
I think the finger style stuff is where I would really like to be with most of my goals. You know, I listen to a lot of finger style covers on YouTube, and I'm like, I want to play like that. But I'll get out the pick and play metal and stuff like that too.
That's cool.
You know.
Well, I think we're going to get our food soon. Number 13 here. But while we wait, let's talk about food really quick. Because
Okay.
we talked about sleep, we talked about reading and some other things. Food obviously is an important part of our day as well.
Yep.
I know you said you hadn't done very many videos about them.
Doing videos on food is hard because I don't think there's anything out there that's more contentious than food. So
In what way? There's
just like anything
vegan,
you exactly
keto.
yeah. You say anything about food, there's going to be a zillion people being like, no, actually, like I think I've mentioned offhandedly on certain videos, I eat eggs for breakfast. They're healthy, and then you get a million people in the comments being like, number one, go vegan, or number two, eggs are going to give you bad cholesterol, and then people are slinging studies like water balloons.
So do you not do those specifically because you're worried about like taking a stance on it and having
No.
people kind of
There are topics that I won't touch because I feel that my public notoriety could unduly influence somebody to do dangerous things. Like, I don't do videos on nootropics or brain drugs.
Yeah.
And I will not do a video on like microdosing. People like ask me about it all the time. And I'm
What
like,
is that?
microdosing is like where people will take small doses of LSD to get certain productivity benefits, or like mushrooms or whatever. They're illegal, so I can't say anything other than don't do it, because even if there is some potential benefit to it, if I say, oh, there's a potential benefit, then somebody may interpret that as, oh, I'm going to go hard and do a ton of them. You know,
That
I
makes
don't want to
sense.
be responsible for influencing somebody in the wrong direction.
That's
so it's like
good
ask
of you
a
to do.
doctor.
I mean, that's really smart because I'm sure that if you were to do videos on those, they would be very popular.
I'm sure they'd be
And
popular.
you get views, you get subscribers, and all the things that any YouTuber would want.
Yeah, and I know like it would probably be fine, but there's something in my gut that just feels, you know, some kid out there might take it as an invitation to go further than they should,
Yeah.
or to do something illegal, and I don't want to.
That's great. You care about
Go
your
that far.
subscribers,
Exactly.
and that obviously affects your reputation and your
Yeah.
livelihood. So I think that's smart.
So with food, I know myself, and I know if I do that topic, I will go so deep in the research, and I'll spend 2 weeks. So I got close to this. I did a hydration video, and I thought, oh, hydration will be so easy. And then I spent 3 full days reading studies, and it was so difficult to actually come up with a script that I was sure on. And even then, people were like, actually, you're wrong about this. So,
Well, we're going to link to, if they are already available, the second part of the day here where we're going to be interviewing you related to specifically YouTube tactics and things like that, and how you pick your videos, how you create them. You can also listen to a lot of that on the podcast as well. But I think for now, dude, like, we don't have to get into food because we don't want to start those arguments right now.
just eat whole foods.
Yeah.
You know, if it comes in a box, probably eat less of it.
Yes, I like that. And then we'll go back in the studio. We'll just jam a little bit. You'll see that at the end of the video here for the end card. But man, I've been having a lot of fun today. Thank you for coming in, Tactics in a Tesla. Appreciate
Absolutely,
you, man.
man.
And we're gonna
Been
have
great.
a good second half of the day. But thanks again for watching, guys. Where can people go find more information? About you?
YouTube.com/Thomas Frank, Tom Frankly, Instagram and Twitter, Facebook.com/Thomas, or collegeinfogeek.com.
Sweet. Cheers.